The status of women in ancient societies was linked to the nature of the cultures and social and religious systems prevalent in those eras. In most ancient civilizations, women were subjected to various forms of discrimination and male domination, whether legally, socially, or economically. First, control of women in ancient civilizations. In ancient Egyptian civilization, the status of women in ancient Egypt was not as poor as it was in some other civilizations. Women had the right to own property, could buy and sell, inherit property, and conclude contracts. Some women, such as Hatshepsut, even assumed power. However, they were not fully equal to men, and their role was often limited to family life, although there were exceptions. In the Babylonian civilization, Hammurabi's Code, the Code of Hammurabi, is one of the oldest written laws, and it reflects women's position as members of the family under the control of the father, husband, or son. Women were subject to the control of their husbands, and if divorced, they could be deprived of their financial rights. Adultery was a crime punishable by death for women, while it was not for men. In ancient Greece, especially in Athens, women were deprived of most political and educational rights. They did not participate in public life, and their primary role was raising children and managing the home. Men were their guardians, even if they were adults. In ancient Rome, initially, women were subject to male guardianship for life, first father, then husband. Over time, some freedoms began to expand, but without achieving full equality. In ancient India, texts such as the Code of Manu reinforced the patriarchal structure of society, making men the masters of the household. The principle of sati was encouraged, whereby women were burned alive at their husbands' funerals. 6. In ancient China, Confucianism reinforced the idea of male superiority, imposing absolute obedience on women to their fathers, then their husbands, then their sons. Harmful practices such as foot binding were practiced to beautify their appearance in accordance with prevailing social standards. Second, reasons for controlling women in the past. Religious perspectives. In some cultures, religious texts were used to justify male superiority. Economics. Societies relied on physical strength in business, giving men an advantage. Wars and conflicts. These reinforced the image of men as warriors and defenders of the tribe. Traditions and customs. These reinforced the idea that women's roles should be behind men, not alongside them. Third, the evolution of the status of women throughout history. Over time, and with the emergence of divine religions, especially Islam, attempts began to reform the status of women and lift the injustice against them. For example, Islam came in the 7th century CE and granted women rights that were not present in many societies at that time, such as the right to property ownership and financial independence, the right to education, the right to marry with her consent, the right to divorce in some cases, the right to inheritance.
Control over women in ancient societies was the result of social, cultural, and economic structures, not human nature or religious necessity. Over time, this reality gradually changed thanks to reform movements and cultural development. Discussions about women's rights and equality with men continue to this day in various parts of the world.